I tell you what's in the newspaper headlines. The Irish Times is essentially leading with last night's match reports, and then Kieran Kilkenny was out doing media yesterday for the cool camps. So he's been saying that he's delighted to be back playing games, and the door is always open for Jack McCaffrey. Pep Guardiola also says promoted Bielsa will be good for the Premier League. It's going to be very interesting to see exactly what type of season Leeds put together next year. I'll go through the English papers there, but it's all England beating the West Indies in the cricket yesterday. Except in The Guardian, I have a story about Nathan Aki signing for Pep for 35 million. Chelsea obviously sold him for 20 million. He is going to be available now apparently from Bournemouth for 35, and there's going to be a rush for his services at 35 million. It is deal or no deal, says the back page of the Star. And this is Jadon Sancho. Red Devils refused to overpay for Sancho at 85 million euros. And Watford may Puel in Claude. Claude Puel is the early favourite to take over as Watford's next head coach. He'd be the 13th managerial appointment in 8 years, and that depends on whether or not they actually end up staying up. And then Pep has his pop at Arsenal, which we played you the audio of a little bit earlier on. Pep shot at Gunners is that same story, and Kilkenny has 2020 vision, as in he wants the games to be played. Pep's gun blast is the headline on that one. And Wolverines is the headline on Wolves beating Crystal Palace 2-0. And De Gea's on the brink. So Neil Custis is reporting that David De Gea could be axed from Manchester United's crucial Champions League bid this week. That would be an interesting decision. That would be an interesting decision. The Daily Mail this morning says, up for grabs, plenty in mix for Irish number 2, Flannery. So this is Jerry Flannery, who's now part of the coaching ticket at Harlequins, where he's line-out coach. Says that there's a bunch of players who could be the new hooker. Ronan Kelleher of Leinster, Connacht rookie Dave Heffernan were all in Andy Farrell's Six Nations squad ahead of Sean Cronin and Niall Scannell, and he says them and Rob Herring are all in with a shout of taking over long-term from Rory Best. Henderson will return to United, but only as number 1, so a ballsy move from Dean Henderson. He's like, yeah, I'll come back, no problems, but you got to make me number 1, which, you know, probably isn't the type of thing that you can do when you're that age. You probably can't tell Ole Gunnar Solskjaer who to pick, and it'll be interesting to see how Solskjaer deals with that. Jack's move opens door, but McCaffrey always welcome to come back. So that's essentially, we have a big squad, we've loads of players, says Kieran Kilkenny, and it opens the door for somebody else to get in, which has always been their attitude. Mick, I'll go green for Jack. It's Mick McCarthy wearing green today. The Racing Post, Ballydoyle could saddle up to 6 against Enable in the King George. So just 2 trainers have entries for the King George this week, and Aidan O'Brien has 6 entrants. We'll talk about that on Friday Night Racing with Johnny Ward at 3 o'clock on all our social channels on Friday afternoon. And they also have Unhappy Hornets set to field City backlash. I don't know, I think Watford have a good chance of actually putting it up to Manchester City, who don't really seem to be putting it in at the moment. I respect Arsenal on the pitch, but not off it, claims Guardiola, and that's Pep speaking after the in the press conference the other night. Jackman hails COVID-19 green light, but urges caution until games restart. And I will be wearing green to remember Big Jack, says McCarthy. And here is the final newspaper headline for us this morning is the Examiner. Kennedy wants crowd limit for games to be extended to 500. So Tracy Kennedy, the Cork County Board chairperson, is echoing John Horan's calls of saying that there should be 500, and John Fogarty has a column backing that up, essentially saying that big ground should have more people in them. So that's what's in the papers for you this morning. Owen, what have we got? What are we looking at?
We start with Jack Charlton's funeral. Kind of another look back on the last few days is what you're going to get on OTB Sports Radio this afternoon. The levels of tributes, like kind of initially when this story broke very sadly last week, I don't know, I was, you can't be surprised by the love that was shown for Jack Charlton, but the sheer volume of it was absolutely incredible. And kind of the spin-off of this has been a few interesting bits over the last couple of days. Sheahan has mentioned the stamp, the Jack Charlton stamp coming out of Ireland at the moment. And I'm sure you saw the Jack Charlton mural as well in Ballina over the last few days. They're looking to officially rename the bridge, the Jack Charlton Bridge, as well. That's in Newcastle. And then over Des Moines, there was questions from Liam McHale last week. They should do the same thing in Ballina to actually further solidify his legacy there. So yeah, the funeral is today, but kind of what a week it's been, and like I'd imagine for certain people it's kind of been a nostalgic week, thinking back and looking back at all the footage and all the audio from the time.
Yeah, it's been great. Like I think coming at the end of that period of uncertainty that we've all been through as well, and coming at the end of everybody having watched a fair bit of the football that had kind of triggered memories or triggered conversations or triggered history lessons in how did we get to where we are now. It was just a really interesting moment for everybody to kind of come together and go, actually, you know what, this one time in our history we were all incredibly unified, and it took a big gruff Englishman who was an icon in England, are part of their iconic team, probably not an icon when he got the job with us, but then ends up becoming an icon. And it's kind of it definitely makes you think about stuff that we don't appreciate until it's gone in a funny way, that actually we take a lot of stuff for granted. And I don't know, maybe the stuff that we've been through is going to make us a little bit more considerate when it comes to dealing with each other and our history and our international relations. But I don't know, maybe that's a futile hope. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll move on to the Ballon d'Or. It's been called off, Ger, which I think, first of all, is a little bit of a shame. So it's been called off because of the fact that there is not going to be a fair enough season. Like, I mean, football is back. Football is being played. Like, I think that this thing could have been done online, but it's not going to happen. So we should just name the Ballon d'Or this morning. We should do our top three and just get it over and done with. Who would have actually won the Ballon d'Or? Of course, we can't predict what would happen between now and the ceremony, but who knows? We're probably still going to get this completely and totally correct. So the top three, in my perspective, for the Ballon d'Or 2020 is as follows. In third place, it would have been Kevin De Bruyne for me. In second place, for me, it would have been Lionel Messi, despite the fact that he's had an indifferent season, as Graham Hunter has put it. Indifferent Lionel Messi is better than basically everything else that's ever existed, though. And in first place, it would have been Robert Lewandowski. Lewandowski would have got the gong this year. He would have got the Ballon d'Or and taken it home. There would have been a few honourable mentions for the likes of Karim Benzema and Cristiano Ronaldo. But for me, that would have been the three. So actually,
Virgil?
now that I think about it, we didn't need to have the ceremony because that's what it would have been.
Where's Virgil?
Don't think Virgil van Dijk makes top five, to be honest. Sadio Mane doesn't really either. Like, you're talking about individualism here. Liverpool was about a lot more than individualism. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin De Bruyne actually pips him to the post in the domestic awards, to be honest.
Where's Jordan Henderson?
Where is Jordan Henderson, indeed? I mean, this particular voting committee didn't recognise Jordan Henderson as much as some other committees clearly recognised Jordan Henderson. Jordan Henderson's not going to win any individual awards this year. He's had a fantastic season. He's been a vital cog in Liverpool's year, but he wouldn't be anywhere near the same company for me as someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who has just been out of this world since the restart. And I guess that actually does kind of strengthen things for the Ballon d'Or. It's all based on 2020, isn't it? So you're not really looking at it from the season as a whole. Although there has been a lot of weird kind of stat chasing from De Bruyne over the last couple of weeks because he's trying to catch Thierry Henry's assist record in a single season in the Premier League. So he's like been throwing his hands in the air. That's a joke, by the way. Whenever his teammates don't put the ball in the back of the net after he passes it in, he's not throwing his hands in the air, but he kind of like threw the stink eye at, I think, Phil Foden a couple of weeks ago when he didn't finish a gimme that he put on a plate for him. So if you're chasing stats, for me, it's never a good look. But like Lionel Messi, if you're talking about stats, has been outrageous. 25 goals, 22 assists in La Liga alone this season, and that's a disappointing year. But then Robert Lewandowski, 51 goals in 49 games in all competitions this season. It's a statistic that would have been inarguable for him to be the front runner, and he was the favourite. I think before all this, he would have taken home the Ballon d'Or.
So is the Ballon d'Or given out in December for that calendar year, or is it a season by season?
It is given out at the end of the year. The ceremony, it was December 2nd last year. So, it's for the calendar year.
I didn't realise that. I didn't realise that it was a calendar year thing up until this. And I mean, the main issue here seems to be that it's obviously France Football Magazine are the ones who have traditionally handed out the Ballon d'Or and who have invented and have always handed out the Ballon d'Or. But because there's no football in France, because they very early on made the decision, which, you know, seems like a little bit of a knee-jerk now, given they could easily be playing football and have finished their season, that has ultimately meant that we're not going to get one. So because Neymar couldn't win it or Mbappe couldn't win it, Nobody else can win it. It just seems it's a very French thing to do, right?
It's true. Like, I mean, I've seen Neymar mentioned in this company as well. Like, Paris Saint-Germain still alive in the Champions League. Maybe France Football Magazine will do a U-turn on this if Paris Saint-Germain go on and actually win the Champions League, and they'll be like, actually, Neymar, Ballon d'Or, Mbappe second place. You're back on Ballon d'Or. Who knows? That it is. It does actually seem like quite a French thing to do, but yeah, I don't fully understand it. I mean, it's very possible to do award ceremonies remotely. It's nothing to do with safety. They just clearly feel that they didn't have enough of an actual season to award this. But actually, the only actual season that hasn't really existed is you guys in France.
FIFA are going to be appointing their own Footballer of the Year at some point. So we'll wait and see. Somebody can still win that, whoever that's going to be. You're saying it's going to be Lewandowski.
Lewandowski, 100% best footballer in the world on form. If you're basing things on form, that's what it has to be. Like, I think Cristiano Ronaldo's obviously had an amazing season if you're looking at pure goal scoring records, but it's been all goal scoring really. That's the only stat line you're looking at with Ronaldo. And I'm sure people out there will actually say that Ronaldo should be the winner this year. Like 30 goals in Serie A this season. His output has been incredible. But I just think Messi's been better than them all season, and then Kevin De Bruyne. Probably a little bit of Premier League bias, I will admit, on that front of Kevin De Bruyne, having just spent a lot of time watching him over the last few months. But he's the best passer in the world, the best Premier League player right now. And like, maybe that's probably the big argument to be had now is like, does an individual from Liverpool's incredible title win usurp Kevin De Bruyne as player of the season?
Is there not a little bit of De Bruyne that's like, well, where were you when the league's title was actually up for grabs, as opposed to when the league season's finished, you're absolutely amazing? Is there not a little bit of that, no pressure involved? Like, what have you done for me lately in big games?
I think he was excellent during the entire year. I think it's more Kevin De Bruyne looking around at his dressing room thinking, what have you done for me when why have you let me down, sort of thing, rather than Kevin De Bruyne letting the team down when things were going wrong. In fact, I think he did anything but let the team down. I think any criticism of Kevin De Bruyne this season has actually been totally misplaced. He's been consistently excellent, actually, and I think that some of the defensive frailties that have popped up have been a bit more costly to them than having someone like Kevin De Bruyne not on form, because he has been on form, and I just really can't see that there has been somebody who's been as good as him all season long. Like the only kind of people you'd probably look at are the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Sadio Mane, who managed to put in that level of performance every single week. Like in many ways, even you look at the top scorers in the Premier League right now, and you're looking at the likes of Jamie Vardy. Like, in many ways, despite the fact that Vardy has been excellent for a number of seasons, there is a little bit more of a freak about that he has been at that level all year. With Kevin De Bruyne, his brilliance has become normalised. With Virgil van Dijk, it's become normalised that you expect world-class output from them every single week, whereas with Jamie Vardy, again, despite the fact that he's been good previously and excellent previously, this feels like it's contained in one season, his true excellence, I think. And maybe there's a little bit to be said about that with Lewandowski as well. Like, I mean, scoring 51 goals in a season is absurd, and he might not do that next year. He'll probably score early 40s or something, and it'll still be a brilliant year. But no, for me, yeah, De Bruyne would be the Premier League representative if you had to pick one.
All right, 0879 180 180 is the number here if you want to get involved by WhatsApp, or you can use the hashtag OTBAM. What else, Eoin?
Will we do the All-Ireland League?
So what's the story?
So you've had 10 Electricity League Premier Division clubs. They've written to the FAI and basically asking them to submit a proposal for an All-Ireland League to UEFA for consideration. So you've had support for this specific version of the All-Ireland League as well, coming from Northern Ireland as well. So last week you had 10 of the 12 Irish Premiership clubs sending a letter to the IFA, and they asked for the proposal to be forwarded to UEFA, the All-Ireland League proposal, that is. And this despite the fact that the IFA have said that they're really not up for this, that actually they've kind of gone against this in the past. And that last week was a fairly big development. So we are kind of edging towards this scenario where some version of an All-Ireland League is going to happen soon, or there will need to be efforts to try and consider it soon. It may not be the full everybody together league version as has been touted in the past, but it may be a situation where you've got two separate leagues and playoffs at the end of the season, which some people might think is a bit of a stepping stone towards a proper one island league.
So just to explain exactly how this proposal would work, the two leagues will essentially start their seasons as separate leagues, and then 2/3 of the way through the season, the top teams from both the two leagues will enter into a playoff style situation, or a final third of the season before you have playoffs, and that way you can keep the European places for the two leagues. That way it's kind of Maria, they're separate, but actually it's an all-island league for a period of the year. It's a little bit pregnant, but it might just work.
And like keeping the European places from having two separate leagues is important. And that also, I guess, is a good way of allowing the naysayers of the All-Ireland League to kind of cling on to their independence a little bit, to give the impression that there are two very separate things, and you can have both. That you can have separate leagues, and you can also come together for the conclusion of the season, which I guess is a way of appeasing that. And like, is it naive to think that that is a stepping stone? Like, because that's certainly the first thing I thought when I saw that particular format. Like but maybe that is naive. Maybe the realistic sense is that you've only got one chance of this, and it better be the best version possible when you take that opportunity.
But I think that if you have one proper all-island league where everybody starts and plays the same number of games against each other, close from the north and south, a bunch of clubs are going to end up in a second-tier competition, and that they're not going to vote for that. And a bunch of clubs or one of the two federations will end up giving up a number of European places, and it's very difficult to see that happening too. So essentially it's the old cliche about football associations being turkeys voting for Christmas, and traditionally they haven't been too keen on that. Now maybe there's a breakaway, and maybe there's a complete breakaway, and ultimately we do end up with an all-Ireland league, which is just rubber stamped by the two independent football associations. So I think the politics of this are going to be interesting over the next while, but perhaps that kind of hybrid where everybody gets to keep a little bit of their own territory is not a bad conclusion and not a bad way to get through it. So,
if you're part of a breakaway, do you have a format in your head that would be the best solution to what's going on north and south?
I guess if you're part of a breakaway, you're just saying that we're going to have a proper league season where we'll play everybody home and away twice. It's the easiest thing for everybody to understand, and it's the easiest thing for everybody to see a structural integrity to the competition. This way, some teams are going to have a slightly easier schedule than other teams. You're going to play that team who is rubbish at home and beat them 5-0. The other team who plays them away from home beats them 3-0. The goal difference still counts at the end of the year. How do we work that out? Is there a formula? And then suddenly it's mathematical and it's not on the pitch. So like ultimately you would want it to be just a proper league season where there's the same number of European places as the league actually deserves, as opposed to a special case for a peace dividend for Ireland. But look, you know, you can make these cases to UEFA for a couple of seasons, derogation, and see what happens. That's really it, though, right?
Yeah, I think so. It'll just be very interesting to see, like, where does the IFA play their hand here? Because, as mentioned, they have been against an all-Ireland league for some time, or at least there have been voices within the IFA who aren't for this. But as you say there, this hybrid version of the League of Ireland and the Irish League coming together for some sort of playoff format at the end of their season means that they would be able to cling to a good bit of autonomy, and that might be the key here. Now, you've got the vast majority of your clubs lobbying you and saying that this proposal should be submitted to UEFA. You've got to listen to the clubs, essentially, don't you? Like, if it was 50-50, you might have some cases saying, well, actually, there's enough of a case against the proposal here from going forward to UEFA. But there's a bit of a landslide victory here in terms of Irish Premiership clubs.
I think, though, those clubs are not saying that they're fully signed up to this. They want to explore the possibility of being signed up to it. So it's talks about talks, which, you know, we've seen that ultimately they do lead places. It might take 20, 30, 40, 50 years before something happens, but talks about talks is better than no talks about anything.